Hello, Year 5, and welcome to Friday's English lesson. So this week we've been looking at how to write a character description. We've been looking at some examples yesterday, and as well as that, you guys have been sort of piecing together the scaffolds for you to have a go yourselves. You've come up with some key adjectives and some key personality traits of your characters. You've had a go at turning them into show don't tells, and today you are going to get the chance to write that sort of paragraph, two paragraphs introducing your characters. Now, because you all have very different characters, we're going to do a couple of things today. We are going to look over the extracts that you looked at yesterday very quickly. So what I'll do is I'll have each screen on so you can pause it and reread it to remind yourself. And then I will show you one that I've written. Like I said, I'm going to try writing this alongside you because we can't do a shared write. And then it's up to you guys to have a go at writing that full paragraph introducing your characters using all those amazing features that you've spotted in the other extracts and possibly using a couple that you've seen in mine as well. So, start off with, it's your turn to be the teacher. So there we have a sentence that somebody could quite feasibly have written. Yesterday, I decided that I would finally finish off the book that I done started. Can you have a go if you've got a green pen at home using a green pen? My apologies about the date. It is not Friday the 10th. Can you have a go at editing that sentence for me? Okay. If you haven't finished yet, pause it. If you have finished, then let's have a look and see. I think I've got the same wrong date on this slide. Excellent. So yesterday should have a capital Y because it is the first word of the sentence. The word I always uses a capital letter, so I decided that I would finally finish. There's a couple of spelling mistakes as well. Decided should be with a C, not an S, and finally he's got two L's. Of and off, we always need to make sure that we're being really careful with. It should be I had started, not I done started, unless you're using it in speech, in which case you might want to use I done started because you might want to use that as a feature and a way of reflecting something about the character. And as always, we need to remember a full stop at the end of the sentence. Okay, so what we will do now is we'll have a look through the examples that we looked at yesterday. So just pause it on here. If you want to go back to yesterday's video to go through what I really liked about them, or if you want to go back through your notes from yesterday to see what you really liked about them, please do. It's always really helpful to use our prior learning so that we can help us on that learning journey. So have a pause on the first one and have a think about what characteristics there you might want to use and apply to any of your characters. And let's have a look at the second one. Do the same thing. So if any of your characters are shy, then you might want to use some of the things in here to help you. You can magpie all those amazing ideas. And have a look at the third one as well. One of my examples always seems to be to write about someone who is interested in books, who likes reading, because I think that there's such a wide wealth of ways that you can describe that language, describe those worlds that those people find themselves in. That it can be really, really effective, and especially that contrast that if you've got a character who is comparatively quite small, maybe a bit weedy, they can read a book and imagine themselves in a world where they are something completely different. So you can get a really good contrast in there. And let's have a look at the fourth one as well. Now, with your character descriptions, it might be that in your warning tales, you want to have a bad guy. And this one is a really good way of looking at that. So have a think about the connotations of the words that are being used, how everything seems cold and calculating. Okay, so I had a go at writing one about my characters, Katie and Tom. I tried to make it so that it's a lot of show don't tell, and so that it's got some of the features that we would look for as well. So I'll read it through to you, and then I'll show you where I've used those features that we're looking for in Year 5 writing. And then it'll be down to you guys to have a go at writing your own ones. So, with his back against the warming heat of the radiator, Tom sat with his nose buried into a dog-eared book. A strand of hair, which was crying out to be cut, flopped across his eyes, and he absent-mindedly flipped it back, never taking his eyes off the page. He barely noticed as Katie whooped and screamed like a banshee at the screen in front of her. Her eyes widened as she focused, her headphones kept keeping her messy hair out of her eyes, her tongue sticking out of the corner of her mouth. She sat hunched in her chair, her tall frame leaning forwards with her elbows perched on her knees, bare through her ripped jeans. Her fingers danced across the controller with a precision born out of months of practice. Another shout, this time of frustration, drew a sigh from Thomas. He briefly looked up from his book, a look of annoyance on his face, but he seemed to think better of taking it any further. So have a look through that by yourselves and see what bits do you like about it and what bits do you think could be improved. Now, I've just noticed as well the word focused is normally spelt with one S. It can be spelt in either way, which is a bit of a strange one, but for the purpose of this, I will edit that and get rid of one of the S's. Okay, so let me show you the things that I picked up on and the things that I will be looking for in your writing as well. So I've started off with a fronted adverbial. Some of the things that we look for in our writing, I always try and start off with, because sometimes when we're in the flow of writing, there can be those things that we forget about. So I would always try and get a fronted adverbial and a relative clause in pretty early on. So with his back against the warming heat of the radiator, that describes how Tom was sat. But because I've moved it to the front of the sentence, I've got to have a comma after it, and I've made it a fronted adverbial. Dog-eared is a really nice expression. It means sort of used. It means well loved. So that's some exciting vocabulary there. A strand of hair, comma, which was crying out to be cut, comma, flopped across his eyes. Now, if I took out that relative clause, a strand of hair flopped across his eyes, that sentence still makes sense. But that relative clause adds a little bit more information about the hair, and it also gives us that show don't tell about what his hair is like. Absent-mindedly, barely, and further down, briefly, got all of those adverbs in as well. Screamed like a banshee, so we've got a simile comparing her scream to something else. Her fingers danced across the controller. That's some personification, so making her fingers out like they are their own people. Those fingers wouldn't normally dance, obviously. And we've also got a lot of show don't tell type things. Her headphones keeping her messy hair out of her eyes tells us a little bit about her hair, but also tells us about how into gaming she is. The fact that she's got headphones, the fact she's got them on, tells us that she's a quite keen gamer. She sat hunched in her chair, her tall frame leaning forwards with her elbows perched on her knees, bare through her ripped jeans. So again, that tells us a bit about her clothes. It tells us a little bit about how much she's concentrating. The bottom bit where Thomas sighs and has a look forwards, but then decides not to do anything about it, is that he's a bit shy. Someone else might have told Katie to be quiet or even to shut up, but Thomas thinks about it and decides, no, do you know what, I'm going to leave it. But it also tells us about their relationship as siblings. We know some siblings, if somebody sneezed, then they would be shouted at by their siblings. But in this relationship, you can see that they're quite friendly, they're quite patient with each other. So there's lots and lots of show don't tell in there. There's loads more I could write. There's lots of detail that I didn't include from my plan at the start of the week. So I might even carry on with that. But that's quite, and it might be that as the story develops, I introduce other bits of information as well. It doesn't all have to be at the start. So your task today is to have a go at writing your character description, just like mine. And some things for you to introduce: your character's appearance, so what they look like, bits about your character's personality, bits about what your character likes, your character's clothes, how do they dress, that sort of thing, because that can also give an insight into their personality as well. Some important details about your character. Is there anything that the reader needs to know about your character that doesn't fit snugly into any of those other bits? This is the time to try and get that in. And all of the time, or as much of the time as possible, try and using show, don't tell. Use mine and use all of the others to help you with this, because they are all there as good examples of things that you can magpie from. I really look forward to seeing these. From looking at your plans of your characters, some of them look like they're going to be very, very interesting. So as always, send me over your finished work, and make sure that you email me with any questions that you have if you are unsure.